We're here this morning to interview Scott Manning. Scott was born in March of 1945 at Bryan, Texas. He is a Vietnam era vet. Highest rank attained was 03. He was a captain in the Army. The interview is being conducted in Burleson, Texas on May the 14th, 2010. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I have no relationship with Scott. He's my neighbor down the street. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. And with that intro, Scott, we'll let you tell us your story of your years in the U.S. military, and maybe start a little bit with a little bit of your family. Anybody in your family military before you, sir?
No, I had an uncle that was in World War I. My father was the youngest of 7, and he essentially was told how to jump and how high. He taught at A&M when it was a college and then became a university. And he was asked to stay on until the end of the school year, and in the process, he had bad eyesight. He was given a direct commission, and all the direct commissions were given out. So he didn't, and he had a family, so he stayed and taught typing at a Navy business school there at A&M. And A&M being a hawkish institution, I can't remember, it had 6 Medal of Honor winners, 19,000 officers, and a whole slew of things. And during his career after World War II, there was subtle chastisement for that. And so that's kind of one reason that I went in the military, because of the subtle harassment he got for not going in a popular war. I do want to tell you a couple of things. I knew that I was prime beef because I was single. This was back during the buildup of the Vietnam era. And I had, my senior year, I started talking to the recruiter. A&M was a big ROTC institution. But you know, you make some mistakes, and so I got out of the ROTC. And so I decided they had a program called College Op where you could go through basic AIT and OCS and become an officer and gentleman. And I was working with the recruiter to do so, and I went down to Houston, spent the night down there, get cut 7 hours of class to do this. I was supposed to take a psychological test and go before a panel of 3 officers. I had to be there at 6:30 in the morning. I was there, I took the test. It was about 45 minutes, and and then around 11:30, they told me that I would not be seeing the panel of officers because this was on a Wednesday. On Friday, Cassius Clay, you know, Muhammad Ali as we know it, was coming to Houston to change his draft board to Houston, and that was at the time he refused to take the oath. So one sergeant didn't tell the other sergeant that was working with me and my sergeant. So I had to go back down, and you don't buck the system, and they asked me if I'd like to come back Saturday at 7 in the morning. So that meant going down the night before, staying in a flea-bitten hotel. And I told them I'd come back at 10, which was not real smart, but I did, and they accepted me. I guess they were in so desperate need. And I went in, and it's kind of interesting about how the Army operates. We got there at 12:30 in the morning, filled out paperwork. They marched us around and get our clothing and stuff, and we were totally exhausted. And I started getting taken, you know, within the first 6 hours I was there. We had a Corporal Cutter or Cutler that was taking us around, and he said, well, I'll be leaving the military, and could y'all help him out? So we all gave him anywhere from $2 to $20 a piece, and I don't think he ever got out, but he got a, and if he you know, took people around at the reception center, I guess as they called it, he was making lots of money tax-free. it's kind of funny. The Army takes you to one part of the country, so you can't, go AWOL and leave. So I went to Fort Dix, and Fort Dix, there's an air base across the street. So 24 hours a day, the jet engines were blaring, and it was hard to sleep. But after a while, you went right through that. I went in August, started my basic training. We got to basic training. They ran us up and down the stairs 3 times, scared us to death.
This was at Dix?
Yes, at Dix. And we should say, being young and naive, I chose the infantry, which is the military says the queen of battle. And it was interesting. There was always a few people when we went out on bivouac and didn't get to shower for 4 or 5 days. First thing you wanted to do was hit the showers and shave. And we had an inspection the following day on Saturday, and there were some that wouldn't shower, wouldn't shave, and we introduced them to Babbo parties. And I graduated at the end of August from basic training, and after we finished and had our big ceremony, we got to go over to the barracks, and we were rewarded with scraping the wax off the floor for the rest of the day. Typical military. Then I walked across the street and went to AIT. A few things that, I should mention, during my time in basic, we got a pass, and the first time I went to New York City, and being a young, naive young man from College Station, Texas, and Bryan, got my first proposition from a prostitute. Anyway, that was big in my time. And anyway, that was all that was left of that. During AIT, this was in the winter, and about 15 or 20 of us were subtly called malingerers because we had 8 inches of snow on the ground, and I'd never seen that much snow in my life. And my teeth were hurting, and I needed to go to the dental clinic. You had sick call, you had dental call. And another thing during this time at AIT, we were out on the M14 A1, I believe it was, automatic weapons range, and we had magazines, and my hands were so cold and so stiff from the weather that I couldn't bend them, and they were just like this, and somebody else had to empty my magazines. And also during the same time, we were out on the M60 range, and I guess there was 20 machine guns out there, and a deer ran across the thing, and they let us open up on him. 20 machine guns going, never hit the deer. It's kind of funny. We had cold weather training. It was cold as dickens, so they set a projector up so we could learn how to take care of our feet and not get frostbite. And we had a chaplain out there with a big, warm, furry hood. And one of the platoon sergeants, we trainees, looked at this guy and said, "Who's the F of you?" And he pulled this jacket back, and it had a cross and 2 bars and a lot of blah, 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 blah. Anyway, that ended that, and then I was able to go home and on leave and report back to Benning School for Boys in Columbus, Ohio. And this was a 6 months program, and at the time, you were guaranteed OCS. And it's interesting because they had quartermaster, ordnance, all these different schools, and before we were able to report, they changed it to infantry, armor, and artillery. So a lot of these guys that were going to go into non-combat arms were going to be commissioned into combat arms, and so they were leaving in droves to not take the OCS. But the Army had a written contract with you, and if they would have been a little more experienced, they could have taken the basic course in ordnance, quartermaster, finance corps, whatever, and spent their time there. But the Army, the service don't tell you everything you should know. In February, I started there in the 1st of January with OCS class, I can't remember, but anyway, what was interesting, I back up a little bit, during Christmas leave, one of my buddies got married, and there were 7 groomsmen and 7 bridesmaids, and I was the only non-Catholic in the group, and there was consternation of whether I should take communion or not, you know. And one of the guys that was a strict Catholic said, "No, don't do it, don't do it." And the groom is saying, "Go ahead, go ahead." You know, it's really funny that, you know, the strict Catholics just thought that would be crazy of a pagan, you know, taking communion at their church. But
So did you or didn't you?
oh, I took it, yeah.
Okay.
And it was interesting because Eddie Young has married Helen Green, whose father was a country lawyer, sharp as a fox, and they had it at a real nice hotel near Rice University in Houston, and they were having the Orange Bowl there, and part of the Orange Bowl football team kind of suddenly crashed the reception, and it was one of those parties that these large laundry baskets that they roll around on wheels was full of champagne bottles, and there were several of them, not just one. So it cost lots of money. This was the wedding I was just telling you about. Anyway, going back to OCS, 6 or 8 weeks after I was there, we had hand-to-hand combat training, and the last person out got special treatment. And in OCS, we had to sit on the first 6 inches of the chair where you sat up like this and ate square meals. You'd take a bite, put your instrument down, fork, a knife or whatever, and chew it up and then swallow. And you could relax a little more. And I was the next to the last man out. And it's one of those deals where you grab somebody's shirt, roll over, and you end up on top of them. Well, instead of me landing on top of them, I was thrown to the side, and I could hear the crack in my ankle, and I couldn't stand up to take the last guy out. So I got to hobble back. And it's funny, I'll refer to this again in a minute, but in the military, I feel that a soldier is like a styrofoam cup. As long as you don't leak, they're interested in you. If you leak, they have no interest. So when I hobbled back with a cast on my foot, I was treated like a leper and shipped off to a medical hold company. And anyway, I was put in a medical hold, and it was really welfare because we would get up, we'd go out to reveille, and after that we would eat breakfast, sweep the barracks, through for the day. That was good work. And I was a lifeguard when I was going through college. So I trained, renewed my Red Cross life saving, and I was going to be a lifeguard, and I thought that'd be a good way to finish the rest of my Army career. But it didn't last, so I went back to OCS, and I graduated September '68, which is a date to remember. One of the low points was that my father and I had words, and he decided not to come, and I was a little disappointed, but you know, things happen in life. I went home on leave, and what's interesting is that I wanted to be in Special Forces, and I was given something, I don't know what it was, and somehow I ended up getting Special Forces, and I went to Fort Bragg after 2 weeks of leave, and this was graduated in September leave, and I got into jump school in November, and you start off with about 400 and you end up with maybe 200 or something. People get hurt or decide they don't want to jump, and there were couple incidences that I remember that's kind of interesting for people that never jumped out of a perfectly good airplane. They have a tower there. It's kind of like the one at Six Flags that you go up, and the parachute, there's a large circle with a hook in the middle, and it hooks in the middle, and they go up, and you're about 250, 300 feet off the ground. And they tell you there's 4 lines on the parachute, and they say slip one direction. You pull them a certain way to move the parachute. And so they go up, and you disconnect, and you float down. Well, right before lunch, this one guy, they went up, and what's interesting is they have this big line that's hooked to your waist. It goes up over the bar and back down, so if you happen to disconnect on the way up, you don't fall. Well, this guy went up, gave him his instructions, went up, and they hit it, and the hook came out, but the line didn't come off. So here's the parachute here, and the guy's hanging on it here, and the wind's blowing this direction, and if he would have gotten off the bar, he would have oscillated right into the tower holding up. So I would have quit right there if I'd had to do it. Thank goodness we went to lunch, and I was able to gain a little bit more courage. The last thing is that if you've ever jumped, you would understand that you don't want to have somebody move under you because they steal your air and your chute will collapse. And one of the last things that that we had was a battalion jump where there's a lot of airplanes and everybody jumping at one time. And one guy did slip under me, and I remember having to run off his parachute before I lost air. And they gave us information that a person that jumps out of perfectly good airplanes is 19% crazier than the normal person. There may be some truth in that. And I also did it to antagonize my mother. I told her I was a prostitute jumper. I did it strictly for money. I don't know if y'all ever did anything like that to irritate your mothers. It was kind of interesting because they said your first jumps were night jumps, and yeah, they were, because you jumped with your eyes closed the first few. You were so scared. And I already mentioned about the walking off the parachute. When I got back to Special Forces, I landed in the trees, and that's an scary experience because they say once you kind of stop, you should drop your helmet to see how far you are from the ground. And it seemed like it took an eternity for that helmet to hit the ground. I finally got out of the chute. I pulled my emergency chute, crawled down it, and finally got my parachute out of the trees, walked back to the rendezvous point, and I would have had to given up because I was exhausted if I was captured. But anyway, that was an experience. I went back to Special Forces, and we had a final program where we had a make-believe country, and we were to go in and train the troops during this time. And there were families that would fight among each other because they were part of the militants and others, and it almost caused us divorces at the time. And we learned how to train these militants. I guess it'd be kind of like some of our people going to Pakistan now, but it was quite interesting, and we learned how to train them and do certain things. And we had a resupply where we were told to carry so much food for the time, and we had to supply our own. It was kind of interesting. I don't know if they have them now, but there was a thing called Gainsburgers. They were a semi-moist patty in a circle, kind of like a hamburger bun. And they said, this is something that you could take and eat, because it's light and it's only for a few days. And anyway, we were supposed to be resupplied during this drop, and if they caught us, we didn't have any food for the rest of the period, and we'd be put in a prison type thing. One last thing I'll say is I was leading a group of an A team of Special Forces during this program, and we stopped at a certain point to get our bearings, and when I did, I left my M114 on the ground. And then when we got almost to the point where our ambush site was, I realized it, so I sent 2 guys back, and luckily they found it. So I was able to, without my lieutenant colonel advisor finding out about me losing my weapon. You don't lose your weapon, especially during war times. So anyway, that was kind of a funny thing. What's interesting, I'll say, I got a certificate saying I was trained in Special Forces. I don't know that I was certified, but I completed the training. And I would like to say one thing, going back to AIT. They dropped us off at one point during the night, and they were going to show us E&E, in other words, escape and evasion. And we were supposed to go from point A to point B without getting caught. And about 30 seconds after we got out of their trucks and they'd driven off, here comes an APC, armored personnel carrier, with a M50 50 caliber machine gun blaring. And if there wasn't many people there that had dry pants after that, I dove under a picnic table and didn't come out, and they were hollering, "Get out, get out, you're all captured." And we all moved on through the area to the point where we were supposed to, but I was so scared I didn't come out from under the picnic table until they all left. Going back after Special Forces, I had leave before going to Vietnam, and during that time I was engaged to this young lady, and she was a friend of my best friend in the military, and she knew where the Catholic Church was. We didn't have a rehearsal, it was a very small wedding, and stupidly I should have asked a little more, but we went to the wrong Catholic church and got there just at the time as everybody was leaving the church. And the bride's mother was so mad. She wouldn't speak to this young lady. That I have never, I still feel embarrassed that the guy, he's a very good friend, and it was sad. He and I resolved issues. I still feel bad about it. Anyway, we got to go to San Francisco, Travis Air Base, and go to Vietnam, and I had a little experience there. We wanted to ride the trolley car, and of course we were really stupid. Mike Peterson, who was a retired judge from Houston, and myself, he's the guy that got married. We wore our jump boots, khaki uniform, and our green berets. We were very proud of that. Very stupid. You don't go to Fisherman's Wharf. And we rode the trolley, and what was interesting, when we got off on the trolley, there was this guy selling papers for a Black Panther magazine. And he was telling us he was trying to save all his brothers by selling these papers, and we were considered part of his brothers. And he said, by the way, I hope everything's okay, but I might have to shoot you when you get back, if you get back. Of course, that didn't sit well with either one of us, and my buddy Mike Peters kind of smiled at him and said, "If we don't shoot you first." But there was really a terrible situation going on. The country was divided, and I'm going to regress back one point. But before I got to my senior year in college, I don't understand why they did this, but we all had to, we were listed as 2S, which was student status. And we had to go and take an examination, I don't know why, and we were fingerprinted at the time to maintain our 2S status. And I want to regress about the business about Cassius Clay and all that before I went in. This is something I remembered. I'll remember this date until the day I die. May 12th, I went down and told the board that I was going to graduate 6 weeks late. I was 7 hours short, and I needed to pick up those hours to complete my degree. And the board had met on May 11th. Well, June 12th, I lost my 2S status and became 1A. And June 21st, 22nd, I had my draft notice. And I took it to the sergeant, the recruiter, and he got me out of it and I got in, but they were so desperate to get people They really didn't care if you finished your schooling or not, which really disturbed me. I was going in anyway. I was a volunteer. And regressing a point, when you were in training, at least at the time I went in, you went RAs first, reserves seconds, National Guard third. So there was some status. You got in the mess hall first if you're a regular Army. And it was really something. Anyway, going back to this, after we got through with the Black Panther, it was kind of interesting. We landed in Hawaii, I guess, or maybe the Philippines, to have a potty break and stretch your legs. We got back on the airplane, and most of the time when you land an airplane, you come in gradually, and we were several miles out, and we could see the coastline of Vietnam, and the pilot said, we're probably going to take evasive action to make sure we don't get hit. There's some stuff going on down near the airport. And instead of, gradually coming in like this, the airplane comes in and drops down on the ground, and we thought we were going to have to fight our way off the runway. And during all our training, they said, you better listen up. If you go to sleep, you're going to die in Vietnam. And you were always taught to be afraid of people in flip-flops, black pajamas, and those sampan hats. So what do? We get off the airplane. There's 40 or 50 of these black pajamas, flip-flops, and sampan hats. And we thought we were going to have to fight our way off, and we didn't. And I had a couple of weeks training, and I went to what we called, I didn't get to Special Forces, but I got to be a MAT team executive. There are 5 people on a team to assist training to either the regular Army or I was with what we call the Rough Puffs, the regional and popular forces. And it was kind of interesting there. If we knew we were going to get in some action, they wore their boots, their flak jackets, and took their helmets. If there was a search and ignore or an ignore situation, they wore their flip-flops and no flak jackets, and we just kind of moved around ignoring each other. So it was kind of an interesting issue. We bought food on the open market, and it's kind of interesting. We were questioning somebody about an issue, and we had a school teacher that was our interpreter, and he made the comment, why do you want to know that? And our question told him, it's none of your business why we want to know it. You interpret, not analyze. And it was a little upset. And what was interesting is all the Orientals like rice. I guess it's a carbohydrate staple that fill them up. And he always used to call rice concrete, and it was in a way. And we were up on top of a hill, and I was out checking the perimeter one time, and unfortunately I found a booby trap grenade, and I was about 5 feet away from it. And the killing for a hand grenade at that time was about 10 meters. And I got chewed up pretty good. And I was airlifted into the 27th, the back, and where the headquarters in 4 Corps. And they would come around, you could hear the whoomp whoomp of the mortars at night, and would come around and ask, can you get under your bed on your own power? And I weighed less at the time, and the Vietnamese always looked at me and said, 200 kilo. He went on kilos rather than pounds, so I weighed about a lot less than I do now, but I asked them if they would put me in a chair. I mean, a wheelchair is one of those cane chairs that had the high backs and everything, and it took 4 of them to put me in it, and I didn't stay long because most of my injuries were from my waist down, and I had a burning sensation in my left leg. I had lost some nerves and arteries, so I wear an AFO, which is a ankle foot orthotic. And I had the medic count the stitches, and I had 236 stitches, 6 silk and 230 steel to sew me up. And at the time, they had delayed primary closure, where all your wounds were so infected that they would just kind of clean your wounds 3 times a day, and after they kind of got the infection out, they would go back and sew you up. And then in about a month, I was sent to Japan, and I stayed there for a while. And in life, you have several regrets, and I had one of them. There was a chaplain there. Everybody takes care of the soldiers, but not everybody takes care of the chaplain. He lost 2 legs and an arm to a 122 rocket that landed right under his bed. And one of the nurses came down and asked me to read Bible passages to him, and I kind of blew her off. And I regret it to this day. After I got out of there, I went to Fort Sam Houston, and they wouldn't let me get out of bed until I was able to lift 10 pounds of weight 10 times, holding it for a count of 10 each time. And in the process, I broke a blood clot loose, and it went to my lungs, and I nearly died from that. But I did live through that, and I got better. I had a zoology degree, and I didn't want to just sit around, a hospital ward, kind of like the medical thing I was in. And so I got trained on how to teach military people, and I taught medical records people about simple biology. It was kind of interesting. The last part of the time I was there, we had a Christmas dance, and all the young ladies were looking around since I was a single officer. They were looking for husbands, and I was kind of a strange oddity there. Here were all these medical people, medical service corps, and nurses, and doctors, and dentists. And one of the young ladies asked me what I did. I said, I'm an infantry officer. I'm a killer of women and children. And I was being immature and facetious, and she just, her jaw bounced off her feet and walked off the dance floor. I guess you do stupid things when you're young. And in the process, I got medically retired as a captain. And there's some issues. You probably look at me, my wife says it's all mental retirement, but I received a medical retirement at 90% disabled, and I have issues with people saying I should not park in a handicapped spot. But they don't see the scars. And I don't know if I had PTSD or still have it. You see how emotional I get talking about some of these things. I don't know if it's normal. Maybe it isn't. I now have a problem with airports. I wear this brace. It comes up halfway between my knee and ankle. You take your shoes off. They don't tell me to take my shoes off, but they treat me like I've got a bomb in them. And I nearly got put in jail once in Corpus Christi because I threw a shoe at one of the women I felt was mistreating me. And I'll end saying that my OCS class, which we didn't lose many, surprisingly. I don't know if any of y'all remember, Life magazine used to have the pictures of the KIA in Vietnam, and sometimes I think one week it was 300. I lost some good friends there. But my OCS class gets together every year. We've been getting together for about 15 years now. The ambassador under President Bush was a member of my class. We have several lawyers, several businessmen, several government workers, and I'm the lone veterinarian. But I think that I must say that I volunteered and I got everything that I asked for from the military. I got my GI Bill to complete my veterinary degree. Without that, it would have been a real struggle. I can't complain. My country treated me good. And that's about all I have to say.
I just made a couple notes here, Scott. Your Gainsburger experience. You eat those Gainsburgers?
Oh yeah, they were not bad.
Did you cook them or were they?
Oh no, they were just, in dog food you've got dry dog food, semi-moist and canned. For closer you go to the canned, you just have the convenience of water and animals are going to eat it better. And you break it open and it's kind of semi-moist. And I ate them. But the reason is I'm kind of a lazy person. Why take something heavy if I can carry something light on a short time basis? You read those experiences. Some of the people that were prisoners of war, they ate some pretty crappy stuff. Gainsburger's not anywhere near that.
When you were in Nam, you bought food. Your unit bought food on the open market.
Right.
From street vendors, etc.
Yeah, more or less, yes.
Did you feel pretty good that it was clean?
Oh yeah, it was vegetables and things like that. I think we did get some staples from a military area. I never went the short time I was there, but they had a Jeep with a 50 caliber machine gun. They always told us never set a pattern because they might wait for you. So you went to these things, and you always wanted to get back before dark, or you were really a moving target. I'll say one thing, going back to Vietnam, I remembered we got attacked one night, and I remember standing there. We were in this pagoda, and all of a sudden they started, all hell broke loose, and they were mortars hitting and machine guns going off. And I stood up, and about 2 feet from my head, a bullet hit the wall. It came through an open door, and I've got that on my dog tags. That was a bullet that wasn't meant for me. It was close, but it wasn't meant for me. So that was an experience.
The grenade, Scott. You said that initially you had open wounds and they cleaned them 3 times a day.
Right. Yes.
Was the grenade contaminated somehow?
No. It was just it was on the ground and blew dirt up and everything, and everybody it seemed like had wounds, at least in the magnitude that I had. It was infected. And what was interesting that when we went to Japan, we were in what we called a dirty wound ward, where anybody that came in had to wear a mask and a gown. Doctors wear white coats. At that time, they don't wear white coats now like they used to. Some older doctors do. But they would have to put on a kind of a gown and a mask and a covering so they didn't bring anything in and we didn't get anything else. So it was, one thing after I got out, a friend of mine and I were planning to go to Europe since we could get space available, and he said he was going to leave by October, and I hadn't got my papers until the third week in October, so we kind of went around our own little way in Europe, and at that time I had a very, very close friend that was MIA, and he was a pilot in the Air Force. And I did visit the North Vietnamese consulate a couple of times trying to find out information, but they wouldn't talk to me. So.
You were single all the time?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave somebody a widow. I had an aunt that husband was killed at the Rapido River in Italy, and she was kind of wacky after that. I mean, I didn't know her beforehand, but the whole time I knew her, she was wacky, and my father made the comment that, you know, the people on the home front also get injured, and she was one of them. She had a son, and she and her son both had problems the whole time. She's dead now, but I didn't want to have that issue yet, so I got married after I got back and was in graduate school. So.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sure.
We appreciate your time, appreciate your service. And,
Let me add one comment to that. When you welcome somebody back, or say, thanks for your service and welcome back, because you can come back in a casket.
That's right. You bet. Certainly something to remember. You bet. Thank you, Scott.
Sure.